In 1970, nursing student Deirdre Barnard received what appeared to be an innocuous gift from her mother. A gift that would eventually turn her life upside down. Deirdre lived with fellow student Lara Clifton, and their flat was frequented by Lara's fiancé, Cal Randall. On her birthday, Deirdre received a child-sized Raggedy Ann doll from her mother. There was no discernible reason as to why Deirdre's mother thought this was an appropriate gift. Deirdre did not collect dolls, nor did she have an interest in them. Her mother simply thought it was something novel, something decorative for the apartment. The doll was large, about the size of an average 4-year-old child. It has a permanent smile painted onto its face, a triangle nose and large eyes were also crudely painted onto the material. Its hair was a shock of red wool, and it wore a simple floral patterned dress with a white apron. While it may seem like a strange gift to bestow upon an adult woman, Deirdre accepted it with grace, and the doll became a permanent decorative feature in their household. Each morning after she made her bed, Deirdre would place the doll on her bed, sitting against the pillows. Each evening, she would return to find the doll still sitting on her bed, propped against the pillows, but each evening something would be different. Deirdre always placed the doll in the same position, sitting with its legs straight out and its arms by its side. But sometimes Deirdre would think that the doll had moved, ever so slightly, throughout the day. As humans, we all rightly question the validity of our own memories. And that is exactly what Deirdre did. Each evening she would come home and the doll would be positioned slightly differently. Tiny movements, like the legs would be crossed at the ankles or the hands would be folded on its lap. Deirdre dismissed this as her own lapses in memory. But when she noticed it once, she couldn't help but become more and more suspicious. She decided to test the fantastical theory that the doll was taking on a life of its own throughout the day. Deirdre began by purposefully leaving the doll in a certain position as she was leaving for work. She left the doll cross-legged and with its arms folded, and sure enough, when she came home, the doll's position had changed. She wondered whether it was simply the muscle memory of the material, but each evening she arrived home to the doll in entirely different positions than she had left it. And this was when the doll began to move, from room to room. One night, Lara and Deirdre returned home late. They opened the front door, chattering, laughing, and dissecting their day. On pushing open the door, they both froze in horror. The doll was in a chair by the front door, kneeling upright as though it was praying. The girls began to panic, as all attempts to recreate the pose of the doll failed. The fact that it was made from fabric made it completely impossible for it to kneel unaided, and it continually toppled over lifelessly each time they tried. Despite their growing fear of the doll, the girls kept it in their apartment, trying to rationalise how it would move from room to room, somehow opening and closing doors behind it. They would regularly leave it in the sitting room by day, and return at night to find it somehow closed in Deirdre's room, perched on the bed as though waiting to be discovered. And yet, the girls continued with their lives, and the phenomena escalated, as though the blind acceptance of the moving doll was not enough for whatever was desperately trying to get the girls' attention. The handwritten notes were an unwelcome development.
What?
Deirdre and Lara began to come home to find notes scrawled in childlike handwriting all over their apartment. Notes that were handwritten in pencil on odd bits of parchment. Again, seeking to find a logical explanation, the girls tore their apartment apart, trying to find a similar sort of parchment that could explain the notes, or even a pencil that matched the one with which the scroll had been written. Neither could be found anywhere in the apartment. The notes alternated between alarming and threatening, each one reading, "Help us," or "Help Cal." As the notes continued, the girls began to grow suspicious. Was someone messing with them? Was it possible that this was a sick joke, or was someone trying to scare them? They left markers at every point of entry into their apartment, on the window ledges and at the doors, and while the doll continued to move, there was no sign that anyone ever entered or exited the property. There were two events that caused the girl to seek external help. The movement on the notes seemed to be explainable, but it was some blood and a chocolate boot that were the final straw. One night, Deirdre returned home to find the doll perched on her bed, as usual. Except this time it wasn't usual. This time the doll was blood-sodden, with blood splatter on its hands and chest. There was no sign of blood anywhere in the apartment, and neither girl had any open wounds or injuries that could account for the presence of blood on their doll. And the chocolate boot? Well, that was another matter, and strange that this, over the blood, caused the girls to seek help. One day, at Christmas time, the girls arrived home to find a solitary chocolate boot sitting on top of their stereo. It had not been there when they left the apartment, and both denied any knowledge of buying it. It just appeared, like a Christmas gift. They decided it was time to consult a medium. The medium they visited listened with great sympathy to their plight and offered an answer to their quandary. Their apartment was haunted by the ghost of a young girl called Annabelle Higgins. Annabelle had played in the fields long before the apartment was built upon them, and these were happy memories for her, so she was unable to leave these fields. She had been endlessly searching the apartments for someone to play with her, and struck gold when she found two girls with a giant child-sized doll. She began to move the doll to get their attention because she wanted to play with someone, with anyone. The medium helpfully asked the girls if they would allow Annabelle to move into the doll, to which the girls agreed, feeling hopelessly sorry for poor little Annabelle, who just wanted a friend to play with. And from that moment on, the doll became known as Annabelle. It's a tricky thing to entrust your sanity into the hands of a stranger. I've no doubt that Deirdre and Lara questioned their sanity, or at the very least, questioned the sanity of each other. How satisfying, then, is it for someone to offer a sense of validity to a situation that seems so far beyond the realms of possibility, never mind credibility? This medium offered the girls a tangible answer to their problem. To accept the spirit of a lonely little girl who just wants to play removes any sense of the sinister from their situation. Besides, they were both training to be nurses, a vocation in which empathy and compassion are key. But not everyone who experienced Annabelle was so sure. Cal was utterly convinced that the doll was evil. I suppose the help Cal messages did not help Annabelle's image for him, but this experience was markedly different to that of Deirdre and Lara. You see, Annabelle gave Cal bad dreams. Dreams that would reoccur night after night. In this dream, Cal would awake and leave his sleeping body behind him. He would watch Annabelle the doll enter the room and stand at the foot of his bed, seemingly staring at him. She would rise slowly from the floor and glide up his body until she reached his chest. Her arms would outstretch, and she would place a fabric hand on each side of his neck. In Cal's words, this would create some sort of electric current, and he watched himself being strangled night after night. A nightmare, however bad, can be explained away, but being attacked in real life cannot. On this particular night, Cal was in the apartment with Lara. They were poring over maps as they were due to go on a long road trip the next day when the noises started. Softly at first, they both listened as they heard the soft sound of dragging furniture, which slowly got louder and louder, until both became convinced that someone had broken into the apartment. Cal burst into Deirdre's room, hoping to catch the intruder off guard, but there was nothing. No furniture had been moved. No one was in the room, except for Annabelle, who was lying in a crumpled heap in the corner. As he approached her, he felt a distinct presence behind him and turned, thinking it was Lara. What happened next is described by Lara. Cal refused to speak of it again. She watched as her fiancé shouted in pain and doubled over as though he had been attacked. She ran to him, and as he rose to speak to her, she realised that blood was seeping through his shirt and spreading over his chest. Lara helped him to the sitting room, and they removed his shirt to reveal 7 deep gouges in his chest, 3 vertical and 4 horizontal, as though he had been attacked by a beast with claws. The next day, the marks were gone, and Cal, Lara and Deirdre contacted a priest. And that priest, in turn, contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren.